The Forgotten Legend. Supreme Admiral Varric stood tall before the Keldari High Council, his pale blue skin shimmering under the chamber's iridescent light. 6 elongated fingers tapped impatiently against the crystalline podium as he waited for the council members to finish their murmured conversations. Esteemed counselors, Varric finally spoke, his voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. I come before you with reports of unusual activity in the Spiral Arm sector. 3 of our outposts have gone silent in the past lunar cycle. High Chancellor Thela, the eldest of the council, leaned forward. The silver markings across her face, symbols of wisdom accumulated over 7 centuries of life, caught the light as she moved. And you believe this warrants a full council session, Admiral? Her voice carried the distinctive melodic tones of the Keldari Highborn. Outposts go silent. Communication systems fail. This is hardly unprecedented. Varric's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of barely contained frustration among his kind. With respect, Chancellor, these outposts didn't merely go silent. They vanished. No debris, no distress signals, no radiation signatures. They simply ceased to exist. The chamber fell silent. The Keldari Imperium had ruled the galaxy for over 15 millennia. Their technological supremacy was unquestioned. The idea that anything could threaten their installations was almost inconceivable. There's more, Varric continued, gesturing to his aide who activated a holographic display at the center of the chamber. Before the final outpost disappeared, they captured this. The hologram flickered to life, showing a vast starfield. For a moment, nothing seemed amiss. Then a section of space rippled, as if reality itself was being folded. A massive silhouette emerged from the distortion, its form unlike any known Keldari vessel or those of the tributary species under their rule. What am I looking at, Admiral? Asked Counselor Zyvex, the head of Keldari military intelligence. Unknown, Varric admitted. Its configuration matches nothing in our databases. The energy signature is anomalous. It's using propulsion technology we've never encountered. Counselor Renala, the youngest member of the council and overseer of historical archives, leaned forward with sudden interest. May I see the energy signature analysis? When the data appeared before her, her expression changed from curiosity to disbelief. This can't be, she whispered. Counselor, Thela prompted. Renala looked up, her expression troubled. I've seen these patterns before. Not in our military databases, but in the ancient historical archives. The Forbidden Archives. The council chamber erupted in murmurs. The Forbidden Archives contained records so old they predated the Keldari rise to dominance, artifacts and information from the mythical early galaxy period that most considered more legend than history. Explain yourself, Renala, Thela demanded. These energy patterns match descriptions and accounts of the Terran Exodus, Renala said, her voice steady despite the gravity of her words. Laughter erupted from several council members. Chancellor Thela herself allowed a small smile to cross her face. Humans? You're suggesting these disappearances are connected to humans. Thela's voice dripped with condescension. Renala, I expected better from you. Even our youngest initiates know humans are merely a myth. Cautionary tales our ancestors created to warn against technological overreach. Admiral Varric remained stone-faced. Myth or not, something destroyed those outposts. The archives describe humanity as a species that achieved faster-than-light travel early in their development. Renala continued, undeterred by the ridicule. They expanded rapidly, encountered other species, and then, she paused. The records become fragmentary. There was a conflict. The Great Purge. After that, references to humans simply stop. Because they never existed, Counselor Zyvex interjected. These are bedtime stories, Renala. The Great Purge, the human resistance, the Terran armada that vanished into uncharted space, all fictional constructs. Renala's eyes flashed with rare defiance. Then how do you explain that this fictional energy signature matches exactly what our outpost recorded before it disappeared? Before Zivex could respond, the chamber's emergency alert system blared to life. A frantic communication officer appeared on the main display. High Council, we're receiving a transmission from the border of the Spiral Arm Sector. It's using ancient diplomatic frequencies. Frequencies that haven't been active for thousands of years. Display it, Thela ordered, her amusement fading. The hologram shifted and a figure appeared. It was Beichtel, with a flat face, rounded ears, and no visible scales or exoskeletal features. It wore a dark uniform with unfamiliar insignia. When it spoke, the Keldari Universal Translator struggled to process the language before finally settling on a rough approximation in modern Keldari. Attention Keldari leadership. I am Captain Alina Reyes of the Earth Reconnaissance Vessel Prometheus. Your expansion into the Spiral Arm Sector has triggered automated defense systems established following the Treaty of Proxima. This message serves as a formal warning. Withdraw your forces immediately or face the consequences. Stunned silence filled the chamber until Admiral Verix finally spoke. It appears the myths have returned, counselors. This is preposterous, Chancellor Thela declared as the Emergency Council session entered its 5th hour. One unexplained anomaly and a cleverly crafted message do not prove the existence of a mythological species. Admiral Verix had spent those 5 hours listening to the council debate the impossible, his patience wearing thinner by the minute. 3 outposts, Chancellor. Not one. And whether you believe in humans or not, something destroyed them. Renala had spent the time diving deeper into the forbidden archives, her aides bringing her stack after stack of ancient data crystals. She now stood, excitement evident in her posture. I found something. A complete account of the final treaty negotiations between the old Keldari Confederation and what they called the Human Alliance. The records indicate that following a devastating conflict, both sides agreed to partition the galaxy. The Spiral Arm Sector was designated as human territory, with automated defenses established to enforce the boundary. If such a treaty existed, why is it not in our standard historical records? Thela challenged. Because it was deliberately erased, Renala replied. The account indicates that subsequent Keldari leaders found the idea of equal treaty terms with another species distasteful. They systematically removed references to humans from public records, relegating them to myth over generations. They planned to eventually reclaim the treaty-protected territories once their forces were sufficient. And you believe this human, this Captain Reyes, is enforcing a forgotten treaty from thousands of years ago? Zyvex asked incredulously. I believe we need to take the warning seriously, Verix interjected. I've ordered all remaining forces to withdraw from. This attack occurred 12 hours ago at your deep space research facility in the Selnar system, Rice continued. The entity you see is what we call a void harvester, an ancient species that feeds on energy, technology, and life itself. The treaty your ancestors signed wasn't about territory, it was about containment. Admiral Verix felt a chill run through his body. The Selnar facility housed over 3,000 researchers and their families. We've monitored your civilization's expansion with interest, Rice said, her image returning. Until now, we've honored the treaty's non-interference clause. But your intrusion into the quarantine zone has broken the seal that held the harvesters at bay. They've awoken from their dormancy, and they're hungry. Chancellor Thela had regained her composure, though her facial markings still pulsed with agitation. If what you say is true, why remain hidden all these millennia? Why allow your existence to become myth? Because your ancestors feared us more than they feared the harvesters, Rise replied simply. They chose to forget rather than acknowledge equals, but we never forgot our duty. The human captain's expression softened slightly. We've contained a small number of harvester scouts, but our models predict a full awakening within days. When that happens, neither humanity nor the Keldari will be able to stand alone against the swarm. Verix stepped forward. What are you proposing, Captain? An alliance, Rise answered. Renewal of the old treaty, but this time with full acknowledgement and cooperation. The human armada stands ready to assist, but we need your knowledge of current galactic infrastructure and access to your communication networks to coordinate evacuation of endangered systems. Varix looked to the council. For once, even Thela seemed at a loss for words. The myths spoke truth after all, Raynala said softly. Humanity didn't vanish. They'd been standing guard all along. Admiral Varix straightened his posture and addressed the human captain directly. I believe, Captain Rice, that we have much to discuss, and perhaps much to relearn about our own history. The human's lips curved slightly upward. A smile, Varix remembered from the ancient texts. Indeed, Admiral. The true story is always more complex than the myth. The awakening storm. The Keldari war chamber hadn't been used in over 3 centuries. Dust covered the tactical displays, and the air filtration systems groaned as they struggled back to life. Supreme Admiral Varix watched as human and Keldari officers worked side by side, centuries of separation momentarily forgotten in the face of a greater threat. Captain Rice stood at the central holographic display, her uniform now bearing additional insignia that identified her as an acting liaison to the Keldari High Command. Around her, the council members watched with varying degrees of skepticism and awe as she manipulated the galactic map with practiced ease. The Void Harvesters operate like a hive mind, she explained, highlighting clusters of red signals that pulsed ominously across the display. They send scouts first, the type that attack your Selnar facility. Once those scouts identify viable energy sources, they transmit the information back to the main cluster. And you've been containing these creatures for millennia. Councillor Zyvex asked, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by cautious respect. Humanity has maintained the quarantine since the First Harvester War, Rice confirmed. Your ancestors helped us establish the initial containment fields before your civilization chose to rewrite history. Chancellor Thela, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since the human ship's arrival, finally spoke. If our ancestors were such valuable allies, why did they erase you from our records? The Forbidden Archives suggest an equal partnership. Reyes exchanged a glance with her executive officer before answering. History is written by those in power, Chancellor. After the Harvesters were contained, your ancestors saw our technology as a threat to their expanding empire. Rather than honor the alliance, they attempted to access our containment technology for military purposes. When we refused, they tried to take it by force. The mythical battle of the shattered stars, Renala whispered. It wasn't against the Harvesters at all. No, Rice confirmed. It was against us. When the battle ended in stalemate, your leaders realized they couldn't defeat us militarily. Instead, they chose to make us disappear culturally. Over generations, humans became monsters in children's tales, then legends, then myths, and finally, nothing at all. Admiral Varix's inner eyelids flickered rapidly, a sign of deep distress. And yet, when the Harvesters threatened us, you came. The treaty stands, regardless of who remembers signing it. Rise replied simply. Humanity doesn't abandon its obligations. The moment was interrupted by an urgent alert. A Keldari communications officer rushed into the chamber, his facial markings pulsing with alarm. Admiral, we've lost contact with the Ixora colony system. All 4 planets, simultaneously. Rice's expression darkened. It's begun. The main swarm is awakening. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of emergency evacuations, strategic redeployments, and frantic coordination between human and Keldari forces. Reports of attacks flooded in from across the sector. Colony worlds going dark, supply ships vanishing, defense platforms being drained of energy and left as hollow husks. In the war chamber, exhaustion was evident on both human and Keldari faces. Rise had removed her uniform jacket, revealing a simple black undershirt adorned with what Varix recognized as military service markings. The human captain studied the latest reports with grim determination. The evacuation of the Meraxian system is complete, she noted. But we've lost contact with the transport group from Kelduri Prime's southern continent. Verix nodded grimly. 40,000 civilians. I've dispatched 2 battle cruisers to investigate. Call them back, Rise said sharply. If the Harvesters have taken that transport group, your cruisers won't stand a chance. Not without the proper countermeasures. For a moment, Verix's pride flared. The Keldari battle cruisers were the most advanced warships in the known galaxy, or so he had believed until a week ago. Seeing his hesitation, Rise softened her tone. Admiral, the Harvesters adapt to conventional weapons after minimal exposure. Your cruiser's energy weapons will be worse than useless. They'll only feed the swarm. Swallowing his pride, Verix issued the recall order. What do you suggest instead? The Prometheus carries a complement of specialized hunter-killer vessels designed specifically for Harvester containment. I'll dispatch them as soon as we finish their technical briefing. Your crew requires briefing to operate their own vessels, Counselor Zyvex asked skeptically. Ray smiled, though there was little humor in it. Not my crew, Counselor. Yours. The statement hung in the air for a moment before Verix understood. You're giving us your anti-harvester technology. Lending, Rice corrected, and only because necessity demands it. The harvesters are spreading too quickly for human forces alone to contain. We need Keldari pilots trained on our systems immediately. Chancellor Thela, who had been observing from the periphery, stepped forward. Why would you share such critical technology with us? After what our ancestors did. Reyes met the Chancellor's gaze directly. Because unlike your ancestors, humanity never forgot the real enemy. This isn't about ancient grudges or political maneuvering. It's about survival, yours, ours, and every sentient species in this galaxy. The war chamber fell silent as the implications of her words sank in. For millennia, the Keldari had believed themselves the pinnacle of galactic civilization, the most advanced and powerful species in existence. Now they found themselves dependent on the very species they had relegated to myth. The hunter-killer vessels will depart within the hour, Rise continued, breaking the silence. But they're only a stopgap measure. To truly end this incursion, we need to close the breach in the quarantine zone your expeditions created. How? Verix asked. Rice hesitated, exchanging another glance with her executive officer. There's a reason humanity was chosen to maintain the quarantine, Admiral. Our physiology has certain properties that make us uniquely suited to interacting with harvester containment technology. For the first time, Renala spoke up from where she had been studying ancient data crystals. The Forbidden Archives mention this. They call it the resonance, some unique aspect of human neurological patterns. Precisely, Rice confirmed. The containment technology requires human operators. It's why your ancestors couldn't simply take it for themselves. It's also why, despite your technological advancement, you've never developed anything similar. A new alert sounded, this one different from the previous warnings. A communication officer's voice echoed through the chamber. Priority message from Earth Command for Captain Reyes. Reyes straightened immediately. Display. The holographic display shifted to show an older human male with silver hair and a heavily decorated uniform. His expression was grave. Captain Rice, the High Command has reviewed your situation assessment. The 7th Fleet has been diverted to your position. ETA 14 hours. Admiral Chen sends her regards and reminds you that Protocol Omega remains in effect should containment fail. Understood, General, Rice replied. Please inform Admiral Chen that we have Keldari cooperation and are preparing a joint counteroffensive. Acknowledged. Earth Command out. As the transmission ended, Verix couldn't help but notice the subtle change in Reyes's demeanor, a tightening around her eyes, a slight tension in her shoulders. What is Protocol Omega, Captain? He asked quietly. Reyes met his gaze steadily. A last resort. Admiral. One we've never had to implement, and hopefully never will. Before Verix could press further, The chamber's main display lit up with multiple emergency signals. Harvester vessels had been detected approaching Caldari Prime itself. How? Chancellor Thila demanded. They couldn't have penetrated our defense grid so quickly. They didn't have to, Rise replied grimly. They followed your evacuation ships back to their origin point. It's a standard harvester tactic, using your own movement patterns to locate high-value targets. Varix turned to his communications officer. Order all planetary defense platforms to full alert. Activate the emergency government relocation protocol. It won't be enough, Rice said, her voice calm despite the dire situation. Conventional defenses can't stop them once they've locked onto a target of this magnitude. There's only one option now. She tapped a command into her personal communication device. Prometheus, this is Reyes. Implement firewall protocol. Authorization Reyes Alpha 709. The response was immediate. Firewall protocol acknowledged, Captain. Deploying shields now. Through the war chamber's viewport, Varix watched in awe as the human vessel, massive as it was, split apart. What he had taken for a single ship was in fact a carrier for hundreds of smaller craft, each now racing toward strategic positions around Caldari Prime. As they reached their designated coordinates, they emitted pulses of blue-white energy that connected to form a shimmering lattice around the planet. What are they doing? Thila asked, momentarily forgetting her usual composure. Creating a temporary containment field, Rise explained. It won't hold forever, but it should buy us enough time for the 7th Fleet to arrive. As she spoke, the first harvester vessels appeared, writhing, semi-organic constructs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They approached the human-created shield, prodding it with tendrils of dark energy. Will it hold? Varix asked. It has to, Rise replied simply. For 10 agonizing hours, the human shield around Caldari Prime held firm against the harvester assault. Inside the war chamber, Caldari and human officers worked feverishly to coordinate evacuations from outer colonies while preparing for the arrival of Earth's 7th Fleet. Varix had never seen such efficient cooperation between different species. The humans operated with a precision that belied their relatively unimposing physical appearance, their commands clear and their actions decisive. More surprisingly, his own officers had adapted quickly to working alongside them, centuries of cultural superiority giving way to pragmatic respect in the face of extinction. The shield's integrity is down to 30%, a human technician reported. Estimated failure in 22 minutes. Reyes, who had not rested since the crisis began, nodded acknowledgement. Status of the 7th Fleet. Still 4 hours out, Captain. The harvesters have created gravitational distortions in the approach vectors, slowing their progress. Chancellor Thila, who had refused evacuation to remain with the Defense Coordination Team, turned to Reyes. Then we have lost. Your shield will fail before your reinforcements arrive. Not necessarily, Rise replied, her expression thoughtful. There's one option we haven't considered. She turned to Varix. Your ancestral archives. The forbidden records Counselor Renala accessed. Do they contain technical specifications of the original human Caldari containment systems? Renala, who had been quietly working in the corner of the chamber, looked up in surprise. Yes, but they're fragmentary. The technical language is beyond our current translation capabilities. I don't need a translation, Rice said. I need the raw data, the original specifications. Understanding dawned on Varix's face. You think you can reconstruct the original containment technology? Not reconstruct, Rice corrected. Reactivate. The original systems were never destroyed, just abandoned and forgotten. If the specifications match what I think they do, there should be dormant containment nodes buried beneath the surface of Caldari Prime itself. Renala hurried to retrieve the necessary data crystals, her usual scholarly caution replaced by urgent purpose. Within minutes, the ancient specifications were displayed alongside modern Caldari planetary scans. Ray studied them intently, occasionally conferring with her executive officer in hushed tones. Finally, she straightened, a new determination evident in her posture. I was right. There are 12 containment nodes situated around the planet, placed there during the original alliance. They're in a dormant state, but their power cores should still be functional. Can they be reactivated? Verix asked. Yes, but not remotely. Each node requires direct human neural interface to initialize, and once activated, they'll need to be synchronized manually. The implication was clear. Rice turned to her executive officer. Commander Park, prepare 12 interface teams. Volunteers only. The commander nodded grimly. The teams were assembled the moment you mentioned the nodes, Captain. They're standing by. Verix was stunned. Your people volunteered without knowing what would be asked of them. Rice smiled faintly. Humanity has guarded this galaxy for thousands of years, Admiral. They know their duty. Chancellor Phila stepped forward, her usual imperious manner replaced by something approaching humility. What can the Caldari do to assist? Your forces need to create a diversion, Rice replied. Something significant enough to draw the Harvester's attention away from the shield, even briefly. My teams will need a window of opportunity to reach the node locations. Verix nodded, already formulating a plan. We'll deploy our remaining battle cruisers. A direct assault on the Harvester command vessel should provide the distraction you need. That's a suicide mission, Admiral, Rice observed quietly. Yes, Verix agreed. It is. Their eyes met in a moment of perfect understanding. Two military leaders from vastly different species, united by the same core principle, the willingness to sacrifice for those under their protection. I'll lead the assault myself, Verix said. Before Rice could respond, the chamber's emergency alert system activated once more. The technician's voice was tense but controlled. Multiple spatial distortions detected. Massive energy signatures incoming. For a moment, Verix feared the worst, a new wave of harvesters, arriving to overwhelm the already failing shields. But the expression on Rice's face wasn't fear. It was relief. Identification, she asked. It's the 7th Fleet, Captain, the technician replied, confusion evident in his voice. They're 4 hours early. The holographic display shifted to show what was occurring in orbit. Massive vessels, far larger than even the Prometheus, were emerging from spatial rifts that seemed to tear the very fabric of reality. Each ship gleamed with the same light-absorbing material as Rice's vessel, but on a scale that made even the largest Caldari dreadnoughts look insignificant by comparison. How? Thela whispered. Rice smiled, a genuine expression of pride. I believe Admiral Chen found a shortcut. As if summoned by her words, a transmission came through. The display showed a stern-faced human woman with streaks of gray in her dark hair. The insignia on her uniform marked her as the fleet's commander. Captain Rice, this is Admiral Chen. Apologies for the unexpected arrival, but we detected your firewall protocol activation. The fleet computed an alternative approach vector through the Schrödinger corridor. Risky, but effective. No apologies necessary, Admiral, Rice replied, her relief evident. Your timing is impeccable. We're detecting significant harvester concentration around your position. The Prometheus's shield won't hold much longer. Stand by for immediate support. The visual feed switched to an external view, showing the human fleet deploying with breathtaking precision. From each massive carrier, swarms of smaller vessels emerge, hunter-killers like those Rice had described, but in numbers that darkened the space around Caldari Prime. They engaged the harvester vessels with weapons unlike anything Verix had ever witnessed, not energy beams or projectiles, but concentrated pulses that seemed to disrupt the very structure of the harvester ships, causing them to collapse in on themselves. Quantum disruption cannons, Rice explained, noting his fascination. Developed specifically to counter harvester adaptive capabilities. They don't destroy so much as unravel. Within minutes, the space around Caldari Prime was clear of harvesters. The human fleet moved with practiced efficiency, establishing a defensive perimeter while specialized vessels began repairing the damaged shield. Admiral Chen's face reappeared on the display. "The immediate threat has been neutralized, Captain. However, our sensors detect increased harvester activity throughout the sector. The breach in the quarantine zone is still expanding. We need to implement a permanent solution." Reyes nodded. "The ancient containment nodes are still in place. Admiral, we were preparing to reactivate them when you arrived." "Excellent. I'm dispatching engineering teams to assist." Chen's gaze shifted to include the Keldari leaders. "Chancellor Thela, Admiral Varix, on behalf of Earth Command, I formally request permission to establish a permanent human presence on Keldari Prime to maintain the containment system." The chamber fell silent. The request was unprecedented. No non-Keldari species had ever been permitted to establish a base on the Keldari homeworld. Throughout their long history, the Imperium had maintained absolute sovereignty over their territories. Yet here they were, facing extinction, but for the intervention of a species they had relegated to myth. Chancellor Thela drew herself up to her full height, her facial markings pulsing with the formal patterns of official declaration. "Admiral Chen, I speak for the High Council when I say that the Keldari Imperium would be honored to host a permanent human presence. Furthermore, I propose the formation of a joint defense initiative, a renewal of the alliance our ancestors abandoned." Varix watched as something passed between the human admiral and the Keldari chancellor, a moment of recognition, perhaps, that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. "The proposal is accepted, Chancellor," Chen replied formally. "The details can be arranged once the immediate crisis is fully contained." As the transmission ended, Rice turned to Varix, a hint of amusement in her expression. "It seems you'll need to rewrite your history books, Admiral." Varix's inner eyelids flickered in the Keldari equivalent of a smile. "Indeed, Captain. Though this time, I believe we'll record the truth rather than the myth." Outside the viewport, human and Keldari ships moved in coordinated patterns, beginning the work of rebuilding the ancient containment system. Above them, the stars shone down on a galaxy where humanity had stepped out of legend and into reality, not as conquerors or enemies, but as guardians who had never abandoned their post, even when forgotten by those they protected. The myths, it turned out, had been pale shadows of a far more remarkable truth.